The shows that make this list are ones that I have seen in person or are filmed productions of musicals that are no longer available to see in person. Disney movies like Princess and the Frog or movie musicals like The Greatest Showman will mostly be excluded for this list. There are 2 exceptions to this list, but we'll get there when we get there. There's also 6 tiers that I'll be using, and I'll explain them as I go. So let's get it started. In a tier of its own on the bottom is a show that I don't enjoy at all.
Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
At the very bottom of this list is Mamma Mia. I'll probably take some heat for this, but I do not like this musical at all. I understand why people like this show. ABBA music is catchy and, from time to time, I don't mind it. But the show throws 22 songs at you.
Ew.
And so many of them are just so disjointed and over the top. I mean, the book trying to connect these songs together. All right, it starts with a relatively interesting premise. A girl is about to get married. She doesn't know who her father is. And they're trying to figure that out. All right, not bad. And then nothing happens. They just string in song after song after song with the most ridiculous segues. It's like, hey, stop being such a mopey bitch. What? Like, what? Wow, hey, our old costumes! Hey, yo, really quick, I fucked these 3 guys in 20 minutes. It was sick. Like, that's not even what that song is about.
Do you remember that guy, Fernando?
For 22 songs. The story, which is paper thin as it is, comes to a grinding halt 22 times to sing a song that has nothing to do with that plot point.
Whoa!
Honey,
Whoa!
Mamma Mia.
Whoa! Whoa! Yeah! Whoa!
And by the end of the show, you don't even find out who her dad is. That was the only reason I had the slightest bit of investment into the story. That's like playing a game of Clue, and instead of finding out who did the murder and where, it's like, actually, it doesn't matter who killed this person. What matters is that we played this game together. Cute? No. Narratively satisfying for a story? No. At least with other musicals that are ranked lower for me, the songs are relevant to the plot or to the conversations. I know that musicals can be written where it's just a bunch of songs and it's up to the book to piece it together. But this is just dog shit.
This is bad.
I have never wanted a show to end more than I wanted this one to end. Oh, and then there's the movie version. And that one's, well...
I tried to reach for you, but you have closed your mind.
That shit is garbage, man.
It used to be so nice. It used to be.
That's the most horrible thing I've ever heard.
This musical makes me dislike ABBA more. I can feel my brain cells dying when I watch this show. I understand why people hate musicals when I see this show. Mamma Mia is in a category on its own at the bottom. Even though other musicals are bad, literally nothing could ever possibly touch this show. I'm gonna get a beer. Fuck Mamma Mia.
He's an angry elf.
So on to the next category. The next category is for shows that I don't want to see again. So leading the bottom of this pack and the second worst musical I've ever seen, Oklahoma. I am talking about the 2019 revival of Oklahoma, by the way.
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Home on the range, where the frogs and the wolverines dance.
To extend an olive branch, I hadn't seen the original Oklahoma show, and when it came to Philadelphia, that was the first time I had seen the show. I tried going into the show with an open mind and not just watching to hate it. Now, I was nervous when I opened the playbill and I saw that one of the songs was called Poor Judd is Dead.
What the hell is even that?
But I thought we'd still give it a shot. And there are some redeeming qualities to the show. One, there's a plot that has a beginning, middle, and end, so it's better than Mamma Mia. Two, I can appreciate the lighting that was done for this show. Whenever there were scenes that were darker and the context of that scene, the scenes were either very, very dim or just completely black, so you could focus on the whatever they want to call that excuse of a language that came out of their mouths.
Who wants an off-farm woman anyway?
Notice you married once, you can get a square meal.
You can't talk that way about our women folk.
Okay. A Don't quite follow, Timmy.
And I get it, like this is a dated musical, it came out a while ago, and they wanted to have a modernized version of the show, but with that being said, I still hated this show. If you're gonna speak in an accent, and you're going to talk quickly, you need to enunciate. Otherwise, it is just going to sound like this.
Come on down, right down, on down, down, no, go down, yeah, you. Who wants an up-farm woman anyway? Come on down, right down, on down, down, no. You can't talk that way about our women. I don't really know.
The actors either spoke so quickly I couldn't hear them, or so muddled that I couldn't understand them. Unless you already knew every single word to the show, you were gonna have a bad time. Will Parker, I don't know what to make out of you. You too poor to be. It's going to do thin to be aroused. Like too thin to be a man. Too big to be a mouse. I don't reckon you around. Hell, that's logical.
I have no fucking clue what you just said, but hell yeah, man. I'm gonna speak my truth.
But honestly, like the whole show itself is just not super duper. The plot itself is so inconsequential. It's really hard to feel like there are any stakes in the show, and it drags so much. Most characters felt really one-dimensional and uninteresting, so scenes where characters would just be sitting and talking in their incoherent babble had my mind wandering. Well, that is until they would just randomly shoot a gun out of left field. The staging was uninteresting, the choreography was bland, people would be talking about a character when that character's literally like 2 feet away from them. They wasted a shit ton of beer and milk for just random scenes. None of the microphones were working. Kentucky lost in the opening round of my bracket, which totally messed up my March Madness. The Knicks can't cover a spread. The stupid cat keeps on scratching my laundry basket and getting a shit everywhere. What was I talking about? I don't know, man. There were just so many things that I hated about this show. I really wanted to try to go into it with an open mind, but like, I didn't like it at all. But again, at least the songs are relevant to whatever was going on at that point, and it had a plot. It's better than Mamma Mia, but that's not saying much. They're both awful.
You're both just awful.
Anyways, The Office musical. Here's another opinion I'll probably get dunked on for, but I don't really like The Office.
What?
Okay, I know that this video has been negative so far, but I promise it gets better. See, look, a bunny! Yes, I watched the first 2 seasons, 28 episodes. It was kind of funny. But the problem was that everyone hyped up the show to be the greatest thing that has ever been made since the invention of rocks and sticks.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Literally, yo, this is the best thing ever.
I get it. Someone says some crude shit, they stare at the camera, initially kind of funny, but it wears off after a while. But what I will say is that the show's greatest moments are its dry humor and restraint in comedic scenes.
Estimated time 12 minutes, so this should take about 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you.
To whomever, meaning us, the indirect object.
No one asked you anything ever. Why don't you take a letter opener and stick it into your skull? Hey.
This musical adaptation doesn't do either of those things.
What level?
Mid-afternoon.
My God!
Pretty much all the actors took like the Mr. Derp approach to comedy.
My antics go right to the funny bone. Oh, I don't feel so good.
Every single actor was so over the top with their mannerisms and delivery, I just wanted to eat a chilled bowl of rocks. Oh, I dropped my chili, dude. We're Jim and Pam, we can't be together, dude. Michael Scott, derp-de-doo.
Alright, I get it!
It's so over the top in the worst way. And it's not the same as a character that is intentionally over the top, like a comedic relief such as King Herod from Jesus Christ Superstar or King George from Hamilton. Both of those characters are the sole outliers in an otherwise grounded production that are a necessary comic relief from the otherwise dramatic show. But this show just completely ruins anything that was decent about The Office, and I don't even really like The Office. Probably because I have no soul. The music was fine. I enjoyed this more than Oklahoma and Mamma Mia, since there were some references I understood.
What are you doing? Stop making faces at the camera.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sick reference though, bro.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
But saying I enjoyed this more than Oklahoma and Mamma Mia is like saying you enjoy stepping on a Lego more than getting hit in the head with a giant mace or doing a cannonball off of a roof and landing on a cactus. Alright, one more bad musical to go. Love Never Dies. For a musical that's as beloved as Phantom of the Opera, to be receiving a sequel, I was really excited. And then...
10 years old.
The story is very, very bad. However, this musical is better than the ones before it because there's actually some decent songs in it. Till I Hear You Sing is actually a banger, and the beauty underneath, while lacking subtlety and getting kind of weird at the end.
You can feel it.
Yes.
Come closer.
Yes.
You can face it.
Yes.
You can take it.
Yes.
Is solid, but the rest of the songs are either cheap imitations from Phantom or just poopy caca. Raoul becomes an unlikable character, Madame Jury just becomes like a dick. Meg simps for the Phantom now.
Why?
But hey, at least Christine and the Phantom made sex. She touched his penis, guys. It is canon. We did it. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
This show had the exact same problem as Game of Thrones, in that when they ran out of source material, oof.
Give me the gun, Meg.
If this show was its own show with characters that were not based from a classic, I probably would have thought it was decent, but because it was a sequel to Phantom of the Opera, I really did not like it. I just like pretending that this was just a fan fiction made by the internet and that it was accidentally thrown on stage. I just pretend it doesn't exist. That way I can go back to sleep. So next is a group of shows I just kind of bunched together. Peter Pan, Oliver, and The Sound of Music are all shows that I either saw our high school put on or I saw a local amateur production. They were fine, cute, innocent, like not bad, not amazing, but I wouldn't really want to ever see them again. Not out of negativity, but just the stories are kind of vanilla. Peter Pan is a story that I never thought was that cool anyways when I was a kid. And honestly, the only thing I can remember from Oliver is, "Please, sir, may I have some more?"
Go fuck yourself!
Although I really do actually like the Sound of Music movie, technically I can't rank it any higher because I've seen the stage show and I wasn't blown away by it. So it stays here. They're all inoffensive, they're not bad, not great, just forgettable. They exist in this weird purgatory. Some solid songs in each of them, but overall not really something I'd want to see again. So they're staying here. All right, so the next list of tier is salad. The best way I would describe these shows are ones that I wouldn't necessarily want to spend like top dollar to go see, but if there was a cheap seat, I'd go see it.
That depends. How much money are we talking about? 62 cents!
All right, so let's kick off this list. Grease. To be clear, we're talking about the staged version of this show, not the film. And this is where we hit the first of a few musicals that are based on a film that just pales in comparison to the source material. The musical is pretty good. The actors look like they could actually be high schoolers, not in their late 20s, 30s, or applying for Medicare. The music, like the movie, is fun and catchy, but the problem is that I saw the movie before I had seen the production, and I didn't realize that most of my favorite songs from the show were the ones that were written for the movie. The version I saw did not have the titular Grease, which is my favorite song, Hopelessly Devoted to You, or You're the One That I Want. Now, in revivals of the production, these songs have been added to the show, but the version I saw didn't have them. So while I enjoy the rest of the songs, the key moments of the show being gone really affected my ability to enjoy it. The version I saw was okay at best. Maybe I would enjoy the revival if it came around, but honestly, it wasn't too crazy about the version that I saw. But it wasn't bad, it just felt like a lot was missing, but still okay. Next, Godspell. Godspell is one of the earlier musicals I can ever remember seeing. I remember watching several productions when they came to my hometown. I watched the movie, and overall, I always thought it was pretty good. A lot of songs are solid, but the problem with the show is that all of the best songs are in the first act. Taking original biblical text is cool in theory, but honestly, I didn't really care about what was going on stage that much. I was just waiting for the next song to happen. And during the second act, the show just comes to a brutal halt. If there's ever a point in a musical or play or anything where I find myself looking in the playbill to see how much time is left or how many songs are left, you lost me.
Oh my god, I am so bored!
But the problem with the show is that the first act is like super upbeat and fun and catchy, and the second act like sucks. In another show that's about the life of Jiminy Crimbus, there is foreshadowing of what's to come, and the first act ends on a dark note. This show just kind of goes from like Kids Bop to like Tears for Fears, like very quickly. I think that this show is better as a concept album instead of a full stage show. If I had the option, I would watch the first act of the musical and leave before the second act just because I thought it was that bad. So with like the first act being like very good and the second act being like bad, it averages to just like being okay. Okay, last of the okay musicals. Spamalot. As a preface, Monty Python and the Holy Grail is one of my favorite comedies ever. The movie, filled with crazy meme humor, fantastic animation, textbook delivery, and absurd situations, has stood the test of time and still has me on the floor laughing.
As the horrendous black beast lunged forward, escape for Arthur and his knight seemed hopeless, when suddenly the animator suffered a fatal heart attack.
The songs in the movie add to the absurdity of the entire film. It truly is the holy grail of comedies.
Sick reference.
So when I saw Spamalot was going to be coming to my hometown, I was excited. During the show, I remember recognizing my favorite bits, as well as appreciating some of the new jokes that were added to the show. But the whole time I was watching it, it just really felt like there was something missing. While the cast I saw was solid, there's something absolutely magical about the original Monty Python cast that can't be replicated by others. Their timing, their delivery, and their chemistry. The animated cutaways were something that always had me in stitches, and so much of what made the movie among my favorites just wasn't there. I recognized the songs I had heard before, I laughed at the jokes that had made me laugh before, but the whole time during the show, I kind of just wished I was watching the original masterpiece. It pales in comparison to the ageless masterpiece, so I couldn't find myself enjoying it as much as I should have. If you're someone that hasn't seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or you're not too crazy about it, you'll really like the show. Objectively, it's a well-made, funny musical, but because I'm such a huge fan of the magnum opus that it's based upon, it's just okay for me. Now we get to move on to shows that I actually like.
Yay!
The last three tiers are good, great, and God tier. Most of the shows that are left are within that good category where it's yeah, it was cool, it was fun, I liked it. But I think that there's a pretty big differentiation between the shows that I'm yeah, that was good, I enjoyed it, and dude, that musical slaps. So let's start off the list with something I'll probably get a little bit of pushback for. The Lion King. What do you mean The Lion King isn't good? It's the best thing that has ever happened in the history of Broadway, it's so good. Yes, The Lion King is good. The show is really creative. It reinvents the animated masterpiece for the stage in ways that are both original and still derivative. The music is good because, it's the same music from the movie, which was already good. Seeing the ways that they created the puppets, the costumes, they're all really cool. However, whenever I've seen this show, I just find myself saying oh wow, that's a really cool costume, or oh wow, that's a really cool way to stage the show. And I'm very aware that I'm watching a musical. My favorite shows, I'm totally absorbed into the story and everything else just kind of fades into the background. I think that this show is a good interpretation of the material, but I've always looked at this show as just an interpretation of the story instead of the definitive way to share the story. The movie has some of the most breathtaking animation, masterclass voice acting, and perfect pacing, but the stage show, it kind of just adds more music to a show that was already pretty packed with music, but the spectacle and emotion just wasn't enough to overcome the story deficits for me. It's good, but it's not good enough to kind of rank among the high musicals that I like, personally. There is one musical that's based on the animated source material that just nails its interpretation, and we'll get there when we get there. But let's talk about the next one. Wicked. Okay, we started hitting the upper echelon of musical theater. Wicked is a show that is beloved and deserves it. This was the first show that I saw that took the sympathetic approach to a historic villain route, and I thought it was really cool. Taking an all-time classic villain and making her a believable protagonist was a really interesting concept. Apparently it was a book first, I didn't know that.
The book can also be a hat.
But I thought they did a really great job with it. The music itself is good. It's good. No Good Deed is a great song, and Defying Gravity is one of Broadway's best showstoppers. But the rest of the music is, at best, cute and fun, but kind of just okay for me. I think overall it's a really good musical with some excellent showstoppers. It has a pretty compelling story, but the second act kind of drags until you get to As Long As Your Mind. But for the story at hand, I think that this is about as good of a show that you could have put on based on the source material. I enjoy it, but there's other shows I just enjoy a little more.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Spongebob. The Spongebob musical has absolutely no business being as good as it is. For starters, this show is so much better than The Lion King for me because it's an original story. Lion King is essentially a play-by-play retelling of the source material. And while Lion King certainly has its spectacle, I don't look at Lion King the same way that I do other shows because you pretty much had the same songs, the same script, the same narrative beats, throw it in a different medium with some new costumes and lighting, and you're guaranteed to have a good show because the original source material was successful. I'm not saying that this show didn't take work and creativity to reinvent for the stage, but half the battle of creating a musical is rewrites and rewrites and rewrites, trying to find that fine tuning of where to put in these songs, connecting the books, going through workshops, And then all of the Disney musicals like Lion King, Aladdin, Frozen, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, all those shows had 75% of the hardest work creating a show done for them already. That's why I appreciated the SpongeBob musical so much more. For starters, it's an original story with original songs. The musical could have been an absolute disaster. They could have just thrown some actors in giant costumes, done a retelling of one of the episodes with a few new songs and called it a day. But they took the effort to create a fresh from scratch storyline. And not only that, instead of just having the actors do their best impressions of the characters, they try to encapsulate the spirit of what made each character unique. Watching the production feels like watching a 2-hour lost episode of SpongeBob. It's a silly, fun musical filled with heart that had me overjoyed to have one final curtain call with the franchise I grew up with. But the reason why I can't rank this any higher is because it's a show I only want to see once. Half of the joy with my experience was the complete surprise I had with the quality of the show and the content. But unlike others on my list, I want to leave this one just as a good memory. It's like when Disney Plus came out and you went back to watch some of those shows that you had fond memories of, and then you're watching it and you're like, oh, maybe I should have just remembered this as being good.
What's up, y'all? You know what time it is? It's about to be that time. This is bad. This is very, very bad.
I don't think I'd want to see this show again just because I had such a special experience the first time I watched it, and I don't want to ruin that with a repeat viewing where I might not enjoy it quite as much. So I'm leaving this as a very good musical. Okay, next, Waitress. When I was told the plot of Waitress, I was like, that sounds okay, sure. I thought at best it'd be cute, sweet, nice, but I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. More often than not, the humor lands. The use of the ensemble brought a lot of liveliness to the stage, and the songs are extremely well crafted. The pacing is great. My one complaint is that Jenna's husband Earl is a little bit too much of a jerk, and yes, I know that this makes it easy for us to root for Jenna, to leave him, and get jiggy with Dr. Pomatter. But I think the story would have been a little more compelling for me if Earl was a little more than just being an asshole. I think that the first act is a little bit better than the second in terms of energy and tempo, but the ending is one that is both narratively and emotionally satisfying. I think some of the livelier numbers in the show, like Never Ever Getting Rid of Me and It Only Takes a Taste, landed much better than the emotional showstoppers like She Used to Be Mine. For me, just because I like the characters' interactions with each other more than I like them as individuals. But overall, I think that this is a really good show that could land well with the right audience. It was funnier than I expected it to be, but the next show on here is probably the funniest Broadway show I've ever seen. Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon is an extremely well-written, but above all else, hilarious show. I am a huge fan of the creators of South Park. I'm actually working on a video for that as we speak. They are not subtle with their appreciation for musicals. I mean, their own South Park movie was a musical. So hearing that they were making a full-out Broadway musical was something I was dying to see. The only problem is that tickets were like $1 million. When I was able to see it, I was ready to be blown away, and I was. This was without a doubt the funniest musical I have ever seen. I was laughing from my gut for almost the entire show. The songs were hilarious, and some of them were surprisingly heartfelt. The Village's retelling of the story of Joseph Smith is without a doubt the funniest bit in musical theater that I think is out there. They also, throughout the show, do a lot of clever nods to Bob Fosse, Lion King, Les Miserables, etc. And it's not like a lazy ripoff, but more of like a true tip of the hat to the musical theater influences. The orchestrations are great, and overall, I really do love the story. It has great pacing and a satisfying ending that ends the show on a really high note. The only problem with the show is that it's very much like The Hangover, and I say that because the first time you watch it, the shock value of all of the absurd situations and jokes blow you away. I really do think first time viewing of The Hangover is one of the funniest things that you will ever see. But most of the humor lands because of the surprise. Repeat viewings are still enjoyable and I'm still laughing, but it's not as hard as I did the first time. I think that this would be a show I would enjoy the most, like watching every couple of years, just to allow myself a little bit of time between the comedy to just kind of forget some of the punchlines and let them hit a little harder. Book of Mormon is a really, really good musical. And honestly, I think it's one of the easiest to recommend to someone who really doesn't love musicals that much. But with so much of my enjoyment coming from the comedy, it's a show that I would have to take a break from to enjoy to the fullest. Next. The producers. And while it is true that Book of Mormon is the funniest musical I've ever seen, the producers nails something that is almost impossible to do, and that the first and second act are both equally paced and interesting.
I'll be goddamned.
The production, which was written and created by Mel Brooks, is based on the 1967 movie, which was also written and directed by Mel Brooks. The plot itself is unreal. A washed-up Broadway producer is jokingly told by his accountant, who has dreams of being a producer himself, that you could hypothetically make more money producing a flop than a hit. And then they decide to do it. Try to find the worst musical that could ever be created, get the worst director, the worst actors, and make it happen. Their journey to finding the biggest flop is filled with gut-busting laughter, home run songs, and honestly, a great pacing of the first and second acts. So now let's switch over to a show that is very different in its tone. Dear Evan Hansen. Yes, I know the movie version sucks.
Ew.
And yes, I know that the plot of the story has its criticisms, but honestly, I don't care. Dear Evan Hansen was a show that hit so close to home for me my first time watching it. I truly believe that your experience with this show completely revolves around the person who is cast as Evan. If he looks too old to be someone who is in a high school, it affects your ability to enjoy the rest of the production. I saw the show on Broadway with a young understudy named Nathan Levy who absolutely crushed the character. I was also blown away with how the concept of the musical was extremely relevant to today's digital age without being too tongue-in-cheek or campy. The music pretty much all the way through was phenomenal, and I really don't think that there's a moment in the show that drags for me just because of my deep personal investment. Evan's mother Heidi was the perfect balance between being a strong emotional foundation while simultaneously displaying vulnerability and compassion. Every scene with her and Evan is mesmerizing. I love the way that they pay attention to some of the choreography between scenes, such as waving through a window and You Will Be Found, and I really think that there's a perfect amount of time for the story to breathe and progress between songs. The story tackles an extremely difficult and complex subject without coming off as manipulative or ignorant, which is really hard to do. The fact that the show ends the way it does, being emotionally satisfying while simultaneously being an ending that is deserved, just drives it home as one of my favorite shows. It's disappointing that the movie was botched so badly, because now people just know it as the box office failure, instead of seeing why it rose to the success that it did in the first place. But if you have the chance to see it and get rid of those memories of the film that's burned into everyone's brain, you need to do it. Thank you. Sincerely, me. Get it? Now let's talk about a show with murderous psychopaths who feed Mr. and Mrs. Tenorman chili for all of London. Sweeney Todd. So this is the only show on this list where I have not seen the live show in theater. But given that there is no possible way for me to see the production since it doesn't tour and is no longer on Broadway, my first exposure to Sweeney Todd was actually the movie.
At last.
The Black Pearl.
And yes, I will not be counting the movie version of this production, but I will count the bootleg of what I did watch, because there's no other way to see it unless I flew to London. I think the concept of this show is insane. A barber who cuts people's throats to either give them mercy for their tortured lives or to punish them for their corruption. Then their remains are cooked in the pies and served to the unsuspected in London. On paper, this sounds like the most grotesque, disturbing, and vile thing that could ever be put on stage. The twists and turns that the story had me going down had me absolutely on the edge of my seat at home. The music and songs have a macabre beauty in their dissonance. It's so different than anything that you would see on Broadway.
Now there's an example of how you do creepy. By having a dissonance like that, and not quite resolving it, and you feel a little relief, and then it goes. There's just that slight dissonance, and then back to...
I enjoyed the movie so much I had to watch the original production that was filmed by...
Name and address withheld.
I don't want to spoil the ending for anyone who hasn't seen this show, but seriously, it's incredible. I understand there are those who would not be into this type of show, and that's fine.
Not.
But Stephen Sondheim created a show that is just so different from anything else I had ever seen. But I can't rank it any higher because I haven't seen the live show, and that's where I'm keeping it on this list for now. But if a show ever comes back, or if it comes to Broadway, I will be fighting to be able to go see that.
No, fuck you, fuck!
It truly is revolutionary. And hey, speaking of revolution.
Les Miserables, please.
Les Miserables is a show that is packed to the brim with emotion. Well, not the movie version. But this show, with the right cast, is incredible. Yes, it is emotionally heavy, and I do think you need to be in the right mood to watch it the same way I wouldn't just casually toss on Requiem for a Dream or Passion of the Christ. But the show is so great. The story also behind me seeing the show for the first time is what makes it really special for me. I only had the soundtrack growing up because the show didn't tour and it was off of Broadway. And then my mom surprised me with tickets for the 25th anniversary show that was playing about a state away or so. And we got there, we had partially obstructed seats, but my mom wanted me to have the seat that had the better view. I'm just like, can we get a shout out for the moms, man? And wow, I was blown away. Being a show that is sung through, it's really easy to have a lot of forgettable songs with one or two standouts. But the show was hit after hit after hit. The show was everything that I wanted it to be. And the reorchestration that is played with the 25th anniversary show is pretty epic. So with all this high praise, why is this not a God tier musical? With as strong as the show starts and ends, the second act really does slow down compared to the first. But the show ends so well that it just kind of upends anything that was like not great from the beginning of the second act. And with such a powerful ending, yeah, you leave that theater like being blown away. I have found it interesting where the marketing of the show always focuses on One Day More, which has been used for like every single flash mob ever. I mean, like, seriously, take a minute to look at like how many flash mobs there are for One Day More. It's ridiculous. They try to like advertise the revolution that happens during the show, but the revolution is like my least favorite part of the entire show. For me, the best parts of the show is not the spectacle, but the character moments.
Believe in me, what you will, but there is a duty that I've sworn to change. All I did was steal some bread.
Honestly, this is prime Broadway. If the show ever comes to town, you gotta see it. And now we've finally gotten to the God tier shows. These are shows that are my absolute favorites and the best that Broadway has to offer. Whether it's for creativity, spectacle, or originality, each of these shows are in a class of their own. There are 4 shows that are left that are equally amazing in their own rights. Hamble Bamble. This one is obvious. There's a reason why this show is essentially mainstream entertainment. There's a lot of other reviews out there that will tell you how amazing it is.
Oh my god.
So I'll try to keep it short. The show isn't perfect, and honestly, no show is. A lot of the songs kind of blend together, and if you go into the show uninitiated, it's kind of hard to keep up with all of like the rapid fire lyrics and clever wordplay that's going on if you have a tiny brain like me. But the show isn't remarkable just because it seamlessly blends traditional Broadway music and hip-hop. The thing that propels this show into God tier is just the sheer creativity and passion that clearly went into making this. Or because of the brilliant choreography of the ensemble and swing, utilizing every inch of the stage to maximize the kinetic energy of any scene, gunshot, or transition. I've always felt that, like, especially with history, but more so with any subject, I'm only as invested sometimes as I am in the person that is delivering the message to me. But this is never more true than with history. If the teacher is like,
in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression.
I think that history is like the most boring thing ever. But if you have someone that's like really passionate about it, then I'm like, hell yeah, Batman. Teach me all that shit. When I was watching this show, I just had the feeling that there was so much passion that went into this project. And then even during like my viewing of it, I just thought of like how many workshops and rewrites that they had to do to make this show what it was. I mean, think about it. A loose retelling of the life of Alexander Hamilton that is rapped and sung through. That sounds like a really bad Saturday Night Live sketch.
Hey, Lenny, what the frick are you doing? My best friend Chandelier.
We're gonna bang as soon as I get my calzone.
All we just need to shut up.
But the fact that it works and it works so brilliantly is astounding in itself. Repeat viewings of the show helps you appreciate the songs a lot more and all the lyrical genius poured into each and every sentence. I am so glad that the show became really accessible because of the filmed Disney Plus version. But the film version just does not do the show justice, only because it cut out so much of the entire staging, which was my favorite part of the production. However, Hamilton is a show that deserves all the notoriety and awards that it received, and it's really changed the way that musical theater is perceived by the public. Both acts are well paced, and standout songs such as What Did I Miss and The Battle of Yorktown really crushed the traditional Broadway numbers. Meanwhile, you have the cabinet rap battle, which is, I think, one of the most clever things that was nailed in its execution. It certainly is one of the most genius productions that I think will ever grace the stage, and if you ever get a ticket, please go see it. Honestly, the best way to get tickets for the show is if there is ever a Broadway lottery. That's how you get a discount ticket to see a show. That's how I saw Hamilton, and then that's also how I saw this next show, Hadestown. I literally just get a burst of excitement like thinking about this show. It's so fucking dope. But this is another show that I went into completely uninitiated. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew it was like some like Greek stuff. And my sister liked it. And with the big sis stamp of approval, that's some USDA approved content, my friend. I saw it in the first 15 minutes. I was like, this is all right. Not bad. Music is solid. Choreography is good. But then the show kept going and getting better and better and better. And then when we got to Wait For Me, I was in tears. The interpretation of having this show in a Depression era setting works so well with the casting. For a show to only get better all the way to the end is something I had never seen before. Like normally whenever I see a show for the first time, I try to keep an eye for things to appreciate, such as like the choreography, staging, lighting, little things, so I'm not just like sitting there just like waiting to be entertained. This way I don't compare it unfavorably to shows that I've seen like 8-10 times, you know what I mean? It's like when a band you like puts out a new song, and more often than not, it's not bad on the first listen, but it grows on you the more you listen to it and learn the words and find out the meaning for the songs. Unlike fucking Mamma Mia, in which case none of the songs matter because they have nothing to do with the goddamn plot. Sorry. With Hadestown, I found myself initially trying to just actively appreciate some of the opening, but the more the show went on, I just found myself growing in awe of the production. The range that's required to sing some of the roles is insane. You have the trembling falsettos of Orpheus's epics to the bass notes that you can feel down in your plums with Hades. I don't want to spoil the second act of the show, but I will say that the show sticks the landing hard. I was blown away that the show ended the way it did. However, almost as an inverse to Book of Mormon, this is the show that I don't think is best upon its initial viewing. I think it's one that gets better and better each time that you see it. The way that so many of the lyrics have double entendres that stand in a completely different context once you've seen the show before is insane. The attention to detail with imagery, lighting, and staging is top notch. The only complaints I have with the show are essentially just nitpicks that aren't even worth the criticism itself. The show is Broadway at its finest, and I cannot recommend it enough. Being a sung-through show can be really tough to keep up with, but if it's done well, it's really a one-of-a-kind experience. And with as much as I love this sung-through show, there is one that's better.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ Superstar is a sung-through rock opera depicting the last week of Jesus' life with music written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyrics by Tim Rice. The genius of this show is that it depicts the events occurring through a humanistic lens. Jesus is portrayed as a man with fears and flaws that, despite everything that is going through his mind, he's willing to die for what he believes in. Judas, instead of being a simplistic mustache-twirling villain and being portrayed as a sympathetic character, is one of the most compelling and interesting decisions that could have been made. This is one of the very few shows I think has perfect structure. The fact that there is not one, not two, but three incredible showstoppers that are placed at the beginning, middle, and end allows for the perfect amount of breathing room between narrative beats. A first act that establishes the characters, their motivations, the stakes, and conflict without unnecessary exposition or songs that exist just for the sake of runtime. And the second act marching towards Jesus' impending death is paced perfectly. We know how this story ends, but the journey to the end being told through this lens is so unique and compelling. The fact that I have friends of mine that are both atheistic and religious, they both enjoy Jesus Christ Superstar, and I think that says how well the story is told. Song for song, this is arguably the most stacked musical there is, since out of the 20 songs there's only one I'm indifferent on.
Skip.
Spaces in the story that would normally just be filled with some throwaway song to lay exposition are instead filled with songs that would be considered some of the best that other shows would have to offer. Heaven on Their Minds, Gethsemane, and Superstar are the big showstoppers of the production, but with the right casting of Judas and Jesus as two tenors with powerful rock and roll voices, there's so much more weight that is added to the lighter songs of the production. And by lighter, I do not mean in terms of emotional weight, but the songs that get forgotten about because there are so many good ones. One of the most interesting elements of the show is when the biggest notes of the show come out. But there is no note that lands harder or higher than the monstrous climax from Gethsemane. Jesus has all of his doubts and fears clouding his mind on why he has to die, and then lets out that monster note, or what should be the monster note, that blasts the audience down to the earth's crust. Regardless of whatever you believe in, to see a man afraid to die but then facing his fears is so powerful, and that's a microcosm of the beauty of Jesus Christ Superstar. It is a show that is so well structured, well paced, and well sung that it can be enjoyed by anyone. It's really unfortunate there wasn't a filmed version of the production that nails what the stage show does. The film version from 1973, while hands down having the best cast, and is absolutely what the show should sound like, adds some long establishing shots between songs that makes the show drag just a little bit too much when the stage version doesn't. Then the film 2012 Arena Show throws autotune on Tim Minchin for some reason.
I don't understand, so out of hand.
and Ben Forster just cannot crush the high notes that I think are required by the role.
What was that?
But you made it!
Stop it. Get some help.
My temple should be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves.
We don't talk about the 2000 film version.
Like a wounded animal, why elect the things you did? Let it blood.
And while the live Easter production is so close to being great, John Legend was a not good casting for Jesus. He has a wonderful voice when he stays in his range and has a lovely falsetto, but just does not have the voice for the role. So I guess I'd have to recommend the 1973 movie, but I would say whenever there's just shots of general landscape, just fast forward it to simulate what the stage show pacing should be like. Because the original stage show is nothing short of a masterpiece. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for. There is a show whose spectacle and beauty is unlike any other. It is a show that encapsulates everything special about the musical theater experience. A musical that is so good, it has not needed any revival, any reorchestration, restaging, or relocation from its original theater after 34 years. Gentlemen. The Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera, for me, is the best musical I have seen. It is the longest running show on Broadway for a reason. For me, it's actually perfect. And the experience starts from the moment you walk into the theater. There are objects covered on the stage, with the theater in a state of disarray and drab. If it's your first time watching the show, you have no idea what's in store for you. But if it's a repeat viewing, you're just drowning in anticipation for what's to come.
Drown in it!
The show begins with a bang, and it is nothing short of magical. The broken chandelier lights up and ascends overhead as the theater comes to life, restoring its former glory as the monstrous chords from the overture fill the theater.
What the fuck?
There is no recording of this moment that can do it justice. The power of the music and the sweeping spectacle in front of you moves me to tears every time.
Oh my god!
And honestly, the overture is a microcosm of the show as a whole. Incredible, sweeping melodies, jaw-dropping spectacle, an emotional core, and an unrelenting pace that does not take its foot off the gas for a single moment. Incredibly, I think that every song in this show is fantastic. There is no filler, there is no wasted song. Most musicals have maybe 2 to 3 songs I think are standouts. This has 8. I am not kidding. 8.
The Ocho.
Think of Me, Phantom of the Opera, Music of the Night, Prima Donna, which is grossly underrated. All I Ask of You, Masquerade, Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again, and The Point of No Return. These are all songs that I think easily would be the best from any other show. The score sweeps from thunderous orchestrations to quiet, seductive strings. The sets are as grandiose as an underground lair filled with smoke and candles, but also as minimal as a small dressing room in the quiet depths of the opera house. Everything in this show is balanced perfectly. Combine that with the masterful score, eye-popping sets, lavish costumes, perfect pacing in both acts, iconic songs, a plot filled with twists and turns from scene to scene, and you have yourself a masterpiece. The most remarkable thing is how the music, as well as the production itself, hasn't changed since its inception. Les Miserables had its score reorchestrated to have a more modern sound for their 25th anniversary. Jesus Christ Superstar has seen so many different restagings of the show, which is part of the appeal, knowing you could see a completely different show from what you've seen before, but also a sign that its impact eventually grows weary and needs to be changed. But Phantom of the Opera nailed its show so perfectly that Hal Prince's original direction is still the show that you see, because it's that good. I have yet to see a show that is as gripping for every single minute during its runtime like Phantom is. I have no idea how much longer this show is gonna run. I mean, it's been 84 years. and the show is still going. When Broadway shut down because of COVID in 2019, I was almost certain that Phantom would be kicked off the Great White Way to have some new show take its place. But upon reopening, Phantom was still sold out, and this was the audience reaction to the iconic overture. The show is still alive and well because it's a show that masters every single element of what makes a musical special. However, all good things must come to an end, and one day the show will close. And when it does, I can be one of the lucky ones who got to say I saw the Phantom of the Opera's original show on Broadway. It truly is the best musical I have ever seen. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below on the ranking. You can say why you agree, why you think I'm a dumb plebe who doesn't know anything, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
Done.
Ooh.